Good morning and welcome back to B4Link TV, your daily dose of industry information. Today I'm joined by Jamie McKean and Robert Windsor from our Policy and Compliance Department to talk about the UK ETS. So Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. What exactly is the ETS and what does it look like in this industry?
Yeah, thank you, Brooke, and good morning, everyone. So yes, the UK Emissions Trading Scheme is what the UK ETS stands for, is a cap and trade policy designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from certain sectors. So participants in the scheme buy an allowance every year. One allowance equals 1 tonne of CO2 allowance of emission of carbon dioxide. They then surrender that allowance at some point in the year, and it's capped. The idea of the scheme is it's capped every single year, and that cap is reduced every single year to gradually reduce CO2 emissions. Current industries covered by this are, large-scale power generation, heavy industry, steel, hydrogen, oil and gas, and aviation, which is obviously a big emitter. Now, there are plans for an expansion of the UK ETS into the maritime sector, which obviously is relevant to our members.
Yeah.
And that's for 2026. Basically, they're expanding their plans to expand the UK ETS to maritime for ships over 5,000 gross tonnage and to apply to domestic journeys. That's from UK port to UK port and not including overseas territories, and also all emissions at berth in UK ports. And that's essentially what the planned expansion is for.
And Robert, we'll come to you. What exactly are the concerns for this when we apply it to maritime?
I think the crucial word is, if you look at our name, is the word international in this context.
Yeah.
We look at things globally, and one of my concerns is that government tends to look at the domestic picture and overlook what the impact is on the international. Now, one of the things that we've got a significant concern about is, will this make international trade more expensive? Which will have the effects for the importer in particular, if the goods are moved, shall we say, on a vessel from Felixstowe to Newcastle or something like that, because this could increase the cost. Well, it will increase the cost. And the other side of this coin is the International Maritime Organization, and I get slightly lost in the negotiations of the IMO. But there seems to be moving towards a situation where there will be a global charge for sea freight movements, and this will be like a carbon levy, carbon tax. We've talked to people about this, haven't we, James?
Yep.
And the thinking is that, in effect, the carbon levy will do away with all the individual ETSs, because there's an ETS for UK and there's a there's an EU ETS. And so, as you can imagine, and they will probably be slightly different in value, is that can you imagine how complex it will be for a shipping line to actually administer different charges? And of course, there might be an Indian subcontinent ETS. If ever we go back through the Red Sea, there could be, and that's where our main concern is. We feel this should be regarded, particularly for feeder vessels carrying cargo either arriving into the UK at what I'm going to loosely refer to as a mother port, to be moved then to a smaller port where customs clearance and everything will be affected, and the goods released, or the other way, an export cargo originating, and one of the big export cargoes, of course, is something dear to my heart, is Scotch whisky. And, it will be brought down potentially by sea freight from Scotland to the port of loading for final taking out of the UK. And I mean, sea freight is the most environmentally friendly method of moving freight.
Okay.
You can look at different factors of how much more environmentally friendly, how little CO2 or CO2 equivalent that a vessel emits compared to either road and in particular air. Air is the most polluting. So, you look at that. So overall, are we actually going to be taxing CO2 equivalents from maritime, where it is between a UK port and a UK port, to an extent that actually it is so disadvantaged against other modes of transport which are more polluting? And that seems almost like it's not meeting this agenda to reduce emissions in this context, and certainly not down to net zero. I mean, we have replied to the consultation, and we've raised this point, whether we'll get anywhere or not, because obviously our main concern is cost, and also the difficulty of tracking all these different ETSs compared to a global IMO scheme. My understanding is the IMO had discussions actually only last week
Right, okay.
on this again, and they have to make some sort of agreement by, I think it's the 30th of April.
Okay.
And that will be where then, if you like, the carbon levy per tonne of CO2 emitted or CO2 equivalent emitted is actually agreed. I mean, there's big variations in what different members of the IMO think, but there generally seems to be a movement towards one flat charge per tonne CO2.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of Beef Link TV, your daily dose of industry information.